To reach Antarctica, every single one of those tourists must cross the Drake Passage, 600 miles of the most violent ocean on Earth. No landmass interrupts the circular current that flows around Antarctica. Winds and waves build without obstacle, gathering force across thousands of miles of open water. 40-foot swells are normal. 60-foot waves are common. The ships don't travel through the Drake, they survive it. In 2007, the MS Explorer made a routine crossing. Not the voyage where it sank, that came later, just a normal trip. Furniture bolted to the floor still slid across cabins. Passengers suffered broken bones just trying to walk to the bathroom. The ship pitched at 45-degree angles. Waves broke over the bow and flooded the lower decks. This was considered good weather. This was a successful crossing. And here's the thing, those 75,000 tourists don't realize until they're already there. They never actually go inland. Not 1 mile, not 100 yards. They see the edge of Antarctica from a ship, step onto a beach for a few hours maximum under strict supervision, and leave. The ships don't dock because there's nowhere to dock. No harbors, no piers, no infrastructure at all. Of those 75,000 annual visitors to Antarctica, fewer than 5,000 actually sleep on the continent. And of those, almost all are scientists at one of 70 permanent research stations. The rest of Antarctica, an area larger than the United States and Mexico combined, sees maybe 200 people per year. Some regions haven't been visited in decades. There are mountain ranges in East Antarctica that have never been seen by human eyes except from aircraft. Valleys where no person has ever stood. The mental image shifts. Antarctica isn't a destination, it's a fortress, and it has 5 walls. The first wall is simple. The weather doesn't negotiate. McMurdo Station, 2016. A researcher has a medical emergency. 42 years old, healthy until that moment, collapsed in the galley during breakfast. They have a plane, a ski-equipped LC-130, fully fueled, crew-ready. They have a pilot prepared to fly him to Christchurch, New Zealand. 4 hours of flight time to a modern hospital with specialists standing by. The plane sits on the ice for 9 days. Not because of mechanical failure, because the air itself is wrong. Temperature dropped to -60 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, jet fuel begins to gel. It doesn't freeze solid, but it becomes viscous, syrupy. Hydraulic fluid thickens. Rubber seals in the landing gear crack like glass. Metal becomes brittle. The plane becomes unflyable, not because anything is broken, but because physics changes. The molecules slow down. The machinery that works perfectly at -20 fails catastrophically at -60. In Antarctica, weather isn't an inconvenience. It's a veto. There's no pushing through a storm. The machines simply stop working, and the weather doesn't care if you're dying. The researcher survived eventually. The weather window opened on day 10, but it could have been day 30, or never. Katabatic winds, gravity-driven storms unique to Antarctica, can hit 200 miles per hour with zero warning. Cold, dense air pools on the high interior plateau, then cascades down toward the coast like an avalanche. Invisible, unstoppable. Winds strong enough to peel metal sheeting off buildings, to flip vehicles, to turn loose ice crystals into projectiles that strip paint from aircraft. Whiteout conditions reduce visibility to 18 inches, not 18 feet, inches. You can't see your hand at arm's length. Sky and ground become indistinguishable. Pilots call it flying inside a ping-pong ball. No horizon, no reference points. Instruments fail because compasses don't work properly near the magnetic pole. GPS is unreliable because satellite coverage is sparse at extreme latitudes. Fuel reserves at stations must last entire winters. No resupply possible for 8 months. Every gallon is rationed. Every flight is calculated against the reserve needed to keep generators running until October. If you waste fuel on a rescue attempt that fails, you might not have enough to survive the winter. The math is brutal. Sometimes people die because the numbers don't add up. The second wall, the ice is alive. In 2013, the academic Shokalsky, a Russian research vessel, became trapped in sea ice off the coast of East Antarctica. The ship didn't hit an iceberg. It didn't run aground. It was sailing through open water when the wind shifted. Pack ice, driven by current and pressure, converged. In 6 hours, navigable ocean became a solid plain of pressure ridges 12 feet high. The ice formed around the ship like a fist closing. 3 icebreakers attempted rescue. 2 of them also became stuck. The sea ice around Antarctica grows and shrinks by an area the size of the continental United States every single year, from 7 million square miles to 1 million and back. That's not melting and freezing, that's breathing. The continent exhales in winter, pushing ice hundreds of miles into the Southern Ocean. It inhales in summer, pulling back to expose dark water. And you cannot predict where the ice will be week to week. Satellite imagery helps, but ice can move 50 miles in a day. Routes that existed on Monday are gone by Thursday. What looks like solid pack ice from above might be thin pancake ice that won't support the weight of a person. Or it might be multi-year ice, compressed and hard as concrete, 10 feet thick. Ship captains navigating Antarctic waters describe it as threading a maze that rearranges itself hourly. Leads, channels of open water, open and close based on wind, current, and temperature. A lead wide enough for a ship can seal shut in an hour if the wind changes direction. Ships have been damaged severely, not just damaged. The pressure of moving pack ice generates forces measured in thousands of tons per square meter. The third wall, there is nowhere to land. Antarctica has no airports, not few airports, 0. What it has are ice runways, temporary, carved from the same surface that's constantly moving, melting, refreezing, and cracking. The blue ice runway near McMurdo looks solid because it is glacier ice, compressed over thousands of years, hard as concrete. But it moves, 30 feet per year. The entire runway. The markings painted last season are in the wrong place this season. Pilots land on GPS coordinates, not visual landmarks, because the landmarks migrate. The fourth wall. The math doesn't work. A single gallon of fuel at the South Pole costs $80. Not because of price gouging, because of logistics. That fuel was shipped from the United States to New Zealand on a tanker, loaded onto an LC-13 Hercules aircraft and flown to McMurdo Station, transferred to smaller ski-equipped aircraft, flown 800 miles to Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, stored in heated tanks because fuel freezes solid at -60. Each step requires its own fuel. To deliver 1 gallon to the pole requires burning 7 gallons getting it there. Operating McMurdo Station for 1 year costs $225 million for 250 people. That's $900,000 per person per year. Not salaries, just the cost of keeping them alive. Electricity, heat, food, water, waste disposal, medical supplies, communications. This isn't expensive tourism. This is the cost of sustaining human life in a place actively hostile to it. Every calorie, every watt, every breath of warm air is imported. Nothing grows there. Nothing lives there naturally except microbes and the occasional lost bird. Every resource comes from somewhere else. A head of lettuce at South Pole Station in winter is worth its weight in gold. Literally. Fresh food is so rare that when a supply flight brings vegetables, people cry. Not because they're starving, they have plenty of freeze-dried and canned food, but because they haven't tasted anything fresh in 4 months. The fifth wall, the legal maze. You cannot simply go to Antarctica, not legally. The Antarctic Treaty, signed by 54 nations, doesn't forbid travel, but it requires environmental impact assessments, liability insurance, rescue capability, waste removal plans, and approval from your home government. You need permission, not from one authority, from a web of them. Private expeditions attempting South Pole treks must prove self-rescue capability. That means helicopters on standby. Cost, $500,000 minimum. They must prove no environmental damage, every ounce of waste removed, including human waste. They must prove no expectation of government rescue. Even if you have $100,000 for a private expedition, you'll spend 2 years navigating permits. And nations can say no. Because you being there creates an obligation to rescue you if something goes wrong. And rescue attempts have cost lives. In 2013, a Russian scientist at Vostok Station developed appendicitis, normally a routine surgery. At Vostok, in winter, it became a crisis. No evacuation possible. Temperature minus 90 degrees. The station doctor performed the appendectomy himself, guided by instructions radioed from Moscow. The patient survived. But if he hadn't, would the doctor be charged with manslaughter? What legal jurisdiction applies at Vostok Station? Russian? International? No one's entirely sure. Here's what makes Antarctica truly different from Everest, the Amazon, or the Sahara. Those places are hard to survive. Antarctica is hard to reach. Everest kills you with altitude and cold, but helicopters can land at base camp. The Amazon is dense and venomous, but rivers connect to civilization within days. The Sahara is vast and scorching, but planes cross it in hours. Antarctica's genius, if you can call it that, is layering every barrier at once. You can't fly directly there from most places because of range. You can't ship there year-round because of ice. You can't build there because permafrost shifts and winds obliterate structures. You can't resupply easily because weather windows are unpredictable. You can't leave when you want because fuel, temperature, and visibility must align perfectly. And here's the part that breaks the illusion completely. Even the people who live there don't control it. There's a tradition at Amundsen Scott South Pole Station called the 300 Club. When the temperature hits minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit, scientists heat a sauna to 200 degrees. They sit in the sauna until they can't stand it anymore, then run outside for about 30 seconds, then sprint back inside before frostbite sets in. A 300-degree temperature swing, the largest thermal shock a human body can experience and survive. They're not celebrating survival, they're celebrating absurdity. The only way to psychologically cope with a place that could kill you in 3 minutes is to turn it into a game. Every March, the last plane leaves McMurdo Station. Everyone who's staying watches it take off, because that's it. No more flights until October. 7 months. You're looking at the last moving speck connecting you to the rest of Earth, and then it disappears. Focus on a single station, Concordia, a French-Italian research base on the East Antarctic Plateau, 15 people, altitude 10,600 feet, so the air is thin, oxygen poor. Temperature minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit, average during winter. Polar night lasts 4 months of continuous darkness. Month 1, April, routine holds. People follow schedules. Scientists collect data. Cooks prepare meals. Everything feels manageable. You can still remember what sunlight looks like. Month 2, May, the sun sets for the last time. Won't rise again until August. Circadian rhythms destabilize. People sleep at odd hours. 3 a.m., 4 p.m. Doesn't matter. It's always dark. Mood shifts. Irritability increases. Small annoyances become significant. Month 3, June. Oxygen deprivation begins affecting cognition. At high altitude and extreme cold, the body burns calories just maintaining core temperature, even indoors. People lose weight no matter how much they eat. 10 pounds. 15. Immune systems weaken. Infections linger. Cuts heal slowly. Month 4, July. Psychological strain intensifies. You've been staring at the same 14 faces for 4 months. In the same building, 80 meters long. No visitors. No deliveries. No mail. No way out. Arguments erupt over absurd things. Someone chewing too loudly. A door left open. Who used the last coffee filter? These aren't trivial complaints. They're symptoms of a mind breaking under confinement. NASA studies Concordia not for Antarctic research, but as a Mars simulation. The isolation, confinement, and danger profile match a hypothetical Mars mission more closely than anywhere else on Earth. They've documented something they call the third quarter phenomenon. Around month 5 or 6 of winter, psychological resilience collapses. Depression spikes. Conflicts erupt. Some crew members stop speaking entirely. They sit at meals in complete silence, surrounded by people, utterly alone. In 1996, at Vostok Station, there was a serious incident between crew members. The argument started over a chess game. Whether a move was legal. It escalated. Both men survived, but there's no way to evacuate anyone. They lived in the same 50-person station for 4 more months, eating in the same galley, sleeping in adjacent rooms, passing each other in narrow corridors. Antarctica doesn't just test your ability to survive cold, it tests whether you can survive yourself. In a place with no escape, no privacy, no change of scenery, no sunlight, and depleted oxygen, the enemy isn't outside. It's the person across the table, or the one in the mirror. The darkness is absolute. Not the darkness of a cloudy night. The darkness of a place where the sun doesn't exist. No moon. Stars, yes, when the weather allows, but they provide no warmth, no comfort. Just light enough to see the endless ice stretching in every direction. Stand outside at Concordia in July. You're at the geographic center of East Antarctica. The nearest coastline is 600 miles away. The nearest other human beings who aren't at your station are at Vostok, 350 miles across solid ice. If you scream, no one outside your 15-person crew will ever know. If your entire station disappeared tomorrow, it might be weeks before anyone noticed, months before anyone could reach you. The wind at Concordia doesn't howl, it hums, a constant low frequency that vibrates through the station's walls. You hear it in your sleep, you hear it when you wake. After 3 months, you stop noticing it consciously, but your body never stops responding. Heart rate stays elevated, cortisol levels remain high. Your nervous system knows, even when your mind pretends otherwise, that you're in danger. The station itself is built on stilts, not for aesthetic reasons. Because the snow accumulates, 4 feet per year. If the station were built on the ground, it would be buried in a decade. The stilts allow wind to pass underneath, reducing drift. But it also means the floor moves. Slightly, constantly. The whole structure sways in high winds. You're trying to sleep, and your bed is rocking. Not violently. Just enough to remind you that everything here is temporary, precarious. Most people who winter in Antarctica don't talk about it much afterward. Not because it's classified, because it's untranslatable. How do you explain to someone in a coffee shop that you spent 6 months in a place where opening an exterior door without gloves means frostbite in 60 seconds? Where a fire means you either put it out or die because there's no fire department coming? Where you watch the same DVD collection 40 times because satellite internet gives you 15 minutes per week? When spring finally comes and planes can land again, new crew rotates in. Fresh faces, excited, eager. The winterers, the ones who stayed, look different, thinner, older, quiet. Their eyes have a distance that doesn't fade quickly. Antarctica doesn't refuse you out of malice. It refuses you because it simply doesn't accommodate human life. It never has. It never will. And no amount of technology changes the fundamental equation. You are not welcome here, and every moment you remain is borrowed time.